The Bengals are going to Baltimore to fight for first place in the AFC North. Let's break it down.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network here on Locked On Bengals, covering your team every day, free and available everywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube. We appreciate all of you who subscribe, who follow, and who make us your first listen. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. James, let's talk about this Baltimore matchup. A lot at stake here. Obviously, the winner of this game likely sitting on top of the AFC North. Tiebreakers aside, they will, at the very worst, very likely be tied for first in the AFC North, depending on what happens elsewhere. So clearly a lot at stake. And from a litmus test perspective, when we were looking at the schedule before the season started, well, Dak Prescott was healthy, but in a lot of ways, after the season got going, this was the first real challenge that appeared for the Bengals on the schedule. Now, as the season went on, it looked like Miami was going to be that first real challenge. And in many ways, I think Miami is a good football team that was challenging. But Lamar Jackson, division opponent, it's always a little bit different in the AFC North. And this is a big litmus test game, I think, in a lot of ways.
This is a chance for the Bengals to completely wash away, make us forget, at least to a degree, about that ugly start against a bad Pittsburgh Steelers team and against a beatable Dallas Cowboys team. Now, the Cowboys have gone on to win 3 straight following that Dak injury, and good for them. But if the Bengals can get to 3-2, beat their top competition in this division on the road, I think it just goes a long way into showing people that, yeah, there's no Super Bowl hangover. Yeah, we know we beat the Jets, and 4 days later we handled a Dolphins team without Tua for most of the game. But it's not just that. We're here to be able to keep Lamar Jackson and company in check and do what they set out to do, which was to defend this division crown that they have, to defend this conference crown that they have. And so starting 0-2 is rough. But if you get to 3-2 with wins, a win over the Ravens and 3 straight wins, it really changes the course of where you were at just a few weeks ago. And look, I remember talking with Burrow at his locker, and he was like, look, just give it a few weeks. I know he told everyone to relax. He was like, talk to me in a few weeks. And that was before the Jets game. Well, now it's been, a week. It would be just over 2 weeks. So a few weeks, we'll add one more to it. Next week at this time, if I go up to his locker and they're 3-2, I feel that locker room is going to be feeling as high as they felt in quite some time, certainly this season. So we'll see if they can get it done. But there's a lot on the line, and it's much, much easier said than done to go to Baltimore. And I know they did it last year, but to go to Baltimore and find a way to get a victory.
Yeah, and home field advantage is something that is less of a thing than it used to be, but this is home field primetime, and we've just seen Thursday Night Football, what that can do for a crowd in terms of getting them into a game and energizing the home team. So that is certainly a factor. It's also still, and I know any given Sunday, look at what's happened to the Bengals this year, the easy part of the schedule. When you look at it that way, this is still the part of the schedule where the Bengals building a surplus would be useful. Their next handful of games after the Ravens, at Saints in New Orleans, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, back to Louisiana. Not a terribly consistent or complete Saints team. And then the Falcons, who can run the ball really well. And then the Browns, and then the Panthers, and then the Steelers again. Then Titans. And then it gets kind of challenging in the back end there with Chiefs, Browns, Bucks, Patriots, Bills, Ravens. Some harder games there to finish the year. So banking some wins here will be very helpful, especially after letting, especially that week 1 game slip away with the special teams issues at the end with the long snapper injury and all those things. So a little bit of added importance here And it's in prime time. I guess the one thing that we haven't really talked about a ton is this team does like to stand up in prime time, especially in stark contrast to the Andy Dalton age in Cincinnati.
Yeah, that's the thing is when I think about primetime now, I'm like, oh, I kind of expect Joe Burrow to play better. I expect Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, these guys that played in so many primetime games in college and national championships and, huge SEC matchups or, Clemson versus, insert the game that you want to talk about that T. Higgins played in, obviously ACC championships, but that conference is kind of easy to win if you're Clemson. Big games and they're seasoned. And so when you have an experienced defense that has played in a bunch of big games together in the NFL, and then this offense, they have to hit another level, and we can dive into that. But yeah, I think Burrow, usually when the lights are on, plays at a really high level. And I don't think he played that way on Thursday Night Football. I don't think we've seen, at least where my expectations are for Joe Burrow, I don't think we've seen that Joe Burrow yet. And so when you talk about any type of key to Sunday night, I think it starts there. Can I see the real Joe Burrow? Because he's flashed, no doubt about it. He's flashed. And you could say no turnovers the past 2 games, 6 touchdowns, and his numbers look really good against the Dolphins. I understand it. I think he needs to take a step forward if they're going to beat the Ravens in Baltimore, and I expect him to. That's where the standard is for Burrow, and I don't think he would want it any other way.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, and that is a long conversation that I think we need to have, is the challenge ahead of the Bengals on offense this week and really all season. We saw Baltimore against Buffalo last week be extremely patient, sit back, keep the ball in front of them. They didn't want to get beat deep, and Josh Allen can punish you in ways that Joe Burrow can't, with his legs, with his stronger arm. And I'm not saying Josh Allen is necessarily better than Joe Burrow, for anyone who's still coming after me after yesterday when I thought the offense was going to struggle after James predicted 30. But Joe Burrow needs to find other ways that aren't necessarily being a 250-pound fast quarterback like Josh Allen, or having that kind of rocket arm to fit the ball into tight windows that he learned in week 1 he can't really do. There need to be other ways for this offense to get on track. And like last year, and to your point, James, can the real Joe Burrow please stand up? After the first 4 games of the season last year is when we started to feel more confident about Burrow. And then in week 7, the 416-yard game, at that point, he's really hit his stride. A dominant game the prior week against Detroit, a game they, I'm sure, felt they should have won against Green Bay, in that second half of the Jacksonville game. We're in that same part of the schedule now, where at this point, the early season excuse is out the window. Things need to either start clicking at this point. I know everything can be incremental, or you might have a long season ahead of you. This isn't Chicago in week 2 anymore. Now we're well into the season, a quarter of the way in after 1 quarter of this game, technically speaking. And so at that point, you should know a little bit more about what kind of team you are, at least in the early part of the schedule. But I think the big part of the conversation is probably around this offense that had such lofty expectations with the addition of these offensive linemen. And I think that, Lamar Jackson and the nightmares that he presents the defensive coordinator is something that we should talk about as well. But I think the focus is on the offense in this game. And I think we should dive into that in a little bit more detail coming up next.
When it comes to burglars, your home is like the end zone. You need the absolute strongest defense you can muster. You need DJ Reader in there. You need Trey Hendrickson in there. And that's why you need SimpliSafe home security. And SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. It's cutting-edge technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back. So you always know that your home is safe. With 24/7 professional monitoring, SimpliSafe's agents call you the moment there's a threat. Right away, boom, they're calling you. And they blanket your home in protection with advanced sensors in every room, window, and door, HD security cameras for inside your home and outside your home. Make sure that you check out SimpliSafe.com, and you can customize the perfect system for your home because every home is different in just a few minutes at SimpliSafe.com/LockedOnNFL. Again, that's SimpliSafe.com/LockedOnNFL. Save 20% on your SimpliSafe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit SimpliSafe.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more. There's no safe like SimpliSafe.
Talk about keeping Joe Burrow safe. Or maybe there's more than just keeping Joe Burrow safe in this game, because while protection is certainly going to be important and Joe Burrow's clean pocket numbers have improved in the last 2 weeks, and it's always better when Joe Burrow's taking 3 sacks in 2 games and when he's taking 13 sacks in 2 games or whatever it was, maybe it was 12. The Baltimore Ravens against the Buffalo Bills, James, just sat in too high the whole game. Made Josh Allen be patient, forced some errors early until they calmed down and took what was there, and inevitably or ultimately wilted and lost the game after the offense did nothing in the second half. But for this Bengals team, that now we have a book on them. You play too high, you make Joe Burrow be patient, they get less efficient. Another game this week where that could be the story that we're looking at and saying, have they figured it out or not?
And I'm sick of this. I'm sick of talking about it. I'm sick of discussing it. And it's almost like the offensive line this offseason. I said I didn't want to talk about. You know what I don't want to talk about? How a star quarterback and star receivers can't figure out how to beat this Tampa 2 or this cover 2 or this insert, whatever you want to say, with too high. Everyone in the world knew that the Bengals were going to face too high and a lot of too high this year. So beat it. Figure out how to beat it. If that means you have to run the ball, fine. I don't think they can run the ball at all. So guess what, Joe? You're going to have to be patient. And Zach Taylor and Brian Callahan, they're going to have to make sure that they have the right cover 2 beaters in place so they can throw on the Ravens. Because the Ravens, well, they're giving up a ton of yards through the air. Tua Tagovailoa threw for 6 touchdowns on this team. Okay? Josh Allen led the Bills back, and John Harbaugh had so much faith in this defense, this awesome, amazing Baltimore Ravens defense. You know what he did? He said, Justin Tucker, stay on the sideline, Michael Jordan of kicking. We're going to go for it here because we don't think our defense can hold the Buffalo Bills to a field goal or nothing. And, well, they held him to a field goal partially because the Bills were wasting the time. But you can't beat this defense. Like, that's the story of the game to me. If it comes down to it and turnovers are the same and, there's nothing super weird or the penalties are the same, then what's the difference? Well, just tell me, does the Bengals offense play the way I expected them to play coming into this year? Because if so, and a lot of that is going to have to be through the passing game because the run game just is not working right now. I don't expect them to go run it for 180 plus yards against the Ravens. Could they run it for 3.5 a carry and be semi-productive there?
Still so bad.
But honestly, 2.7. He's averaging 2.7. So I almost added a yard.
It would be an improvement, but it's still bad, just to be clear.
No doubt. And that's why it to me, figure out how to beat it and beat it. Because I know Joe Burrow is extremely smart from a football standpoint, right? And he can read defenses and all. Okay, fine. Dial up the right plays, figure it out, and beat it. Because to me, Marcus Peters is not the Marcus Peters you remember. And even when he was Marcus Peters, you remember, guess what? He was beatable. He went for a lot of interceptions and would have some flashy pick sixes and would also get beat a lot. That's why he got traded for like a 5th rounder when the Rams traded Marcus Peters. He's fine. He's also coming off of an ACL. So let's be honest, he's probably not prime Marcus Peters right now. This secondary is beatable. And so however they need to find a way to beat it. It's probably going to define the game unless there's 4 turnovers on one side or another, or a bunch of fumbles or a bunch of something weird that you really don't expect. Can this Bengals offense consistently move the ball through the air? Because we know they're not going to be able to run it well. At least I've kind of accepted that at this stage right now with where the offensive line is and where Joe Mixon is.
From a matchup perspective, even if the Ravens do sit in too high the whole game, this isn't a game where you would think, oh yeah, we'll be able to run the ball this week. Justin Madubuike, Calais Campbell, and blanking on his name, Broderick Washington on the interior for the Ravens have all been really good and have been especially stout against the run. And by DVOA, the Ravens have the 5th worst defense in the NFL overall, according to DVOA, and second worst if you go by weighted DVOA. But their rush DVOA on defense is 4th best. So they're defending the run at a high level. And this is somewhat similar to Miami. Miami had a solid rush defense and actually a better pass defense. Baltimore's passing defense, according to DVOA, which takes weighted yards over average and has a whole formula to it, 30th in the NFL by traditional stats, allowing the most passing yards per game by 15. And I know they've played Miami. I know they played Buffalo, but they also gave up over 300 yards to Mac Jones and over 300 to Joe Flacco, but Joe Flacco had to throw over 50 passes to get there. There is an opportunity here to take advantage of a defense that has names, but outside of maybe Marcus Williams, and even Marcus Williams at times, hasn't played up to the standard of those names. There's some really good players. And like you said, James, with a guy like Marcus Peters, there's a lot of variance in that secondary. But so far, year to date, there are opportunities there. And the Bengals have a lot of tape from some teams that are even somewhat similar to them in some ways. When you look at how Buffalo has Stephon Diggs and some weapons, you look at Miami with their 2 weapons, there are some things that they can look at and say, hey, this worked. Maybe we can try this. And the last note is, speaking of cover 2 trends, just something that we've been looking at and something that you're sick of talking about, James, Paul Dehner Jr. tweeting that via True Media and PFF, they had Joe Burrow at 7 of 7 for 83 yards against cover 2 on Thursday Night Football. So there is some positive news on the Bengals against cover 2, even if the offense wasn't exactly what you wanted it to be on Thursday.
Yeah, I just don't want to say, well, they sat back and dared the Bengals to be patient, and they couldn't do it. Why can't they? Joe Burrow is good at short pass. Like, he's accurate. Okay.
He's been really bad actually in the intermediate part of the field this year. And that's a huge problem. Like, he has been missing. And this was where he was better than everyone else in the NFL last year in the intermediate part of the field. The accuracy, the timing is not there right now. So that's one thing that you could point to and say, this whole team needs to be better in that specific area.
I said short passing, but yes, the intermediate part, that's
I wasn't correcting you. I was just pointing out. Yeah, sorry, to be clear. I'm not correcting James there, just pointing out something else.
That's what stood out though against Miami when he was 20 of 31, had T a couple times, and it was like, why is the timing off there? Is it just an off target? What is it? And yeah, that's got to hit those. Gonna have to hit them. And if you hit them early, then maybe they'll get out of that cover 2 a little bit. And if not, fine. Then move the ball. That's the thing that Burrow did as a rookie, is he moved the ball down the field, and it was super inefficient, and it wasn't necessarily his fault because they didn't really have anyone that was separating downfield. But they weren't hitting deep balls. They were doing everything but that. And so I know he's got the patience and the talent to do it and all of those things. And so I just don't want to be talking about that. And I also am expecting this offense to take a step. And I think they look at that secondary and view it as beatable. Now, no one's said that, to be clear, but I don't think they look at this secondary and they're like, oh man, how are we going to move the ball? Or this defense in general. I mean, they're good in some spots, Marlon Humphrey's really, really damn good. The Ravens great anywhere. I don't see a TJ Watt. I don't see, a guy making crazy plays like Minka has all year, which you had to deal with. I look at it. It's time for this offense to take another step. And if they do, I think they have a real shot to pull off the upset, according to BetOnline, and beat the Ravens.
Yeah, there's an opportunity here for that, but I wouldn't be shocked if it's tough. That's all I'm saying. I wouldn't be shocked if it's tough. They are high variance players to some degree, Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey, but they are players that have a lot of skins on the wall, as it were. Marcus Williams, the Ravens' big free agent acquisition, their new rangy free safety, really good player. Justin Madubuike stepping up in a huge way on the defensive interior. Calais Campbell, lots of skins on the wall there. But you're right, there is no current defensive player of the year candidate on this defense. Mm-hmm. So that there should be vulnerabilities here. There should be areas where the Bengals can take advantage. They should be able to create matchups that they like, whether it's T. Higgins getting one-on-ones, whether it's moving Jamar Chase more than they did in week 4, more like they did in the first 3 weeks of the season, which, by the way,
They should do.
Jamar Chase in week 4, fewest slot snaps on the season.
Get him in the
slot 3 times as opposed to a much higher rate in the first 3 weeks of the season. So if they go back to that, that's another thing they could do to challenge the Ravens.
Yeah, I would start him in the slot. The first play, start him in the slot. Send him on a go ball from the slot. Let's see. I mean, or you know what you do, and I actually really like this, and I think Sands pointed this one out, and then we'll switch gears and talk about the defense. The little choice route that he had against the Jets out of the backfield where he lined up as a running back, those things are fun to me, and I think that's the. You want to double him and do all that stuff? Well, good luck. Good luck doing it there, because we just put him in the backfield, and we'll do that. You don't have to do it a ton, but he's going to
did a lot of it in the first couple of weeks, and then went away from it entirely.
Yeah, so we'll see. Hopefully they bust that out a little bit, because getting in the ball, man, we saw it last year with the Ravens. It kind of started there. He's hard to tackle, and who knows who he puts in a blender and takes it all away for 6. We'll switch gears. We'll talk about the Bengals defense, how it matches up with Lamar Jackson in just a second. But first, a word from BetOnline, because if you think the Bengals are going to beat the Ravens on Sunday night, you can wager right now at BetOnline. Maybe you think that Joe Burrow is going to throw 6 touchdowns and start on the MVP train right now and make his MVP run. Well, you can wager on that, from NFL future bets to all things week 5 betting lines and anything in between, including Major League Baseball in the playoffs, the NBA right around the corner. I'm liking Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, and the Ohio Cavaliers, baby. You can wager on it all right now at BetOnline, from boxing, golf to NFL, college football. BetOnline, where the game starts.
We've talked about the offense quite a bit. We'll talk about the offense quite a bit more after Sunday, no matter what happens, because there will be things to talk about, unless the defense has like 5 pick sixes. That might steal the show. And a big reason the Bengals have won the last couple of weeks is the turnover battle. Turnovers not going their way the first 2 weeks, with Joe Burrow playing one of the worst games of his career. He would even admit it. I think he has in week 1 against Pittsburgh, turning the ball over so many times. And the defense for their side of things just wasn't able to quite finish a few plays that were very close to being turnovers early in the season. The last 2 weeks, that trend has flipped on its head. They're coming down with at least a handful of those takeaways per game, and honestly, even leaving more opportunities on the field, especially against the Jets. And so the defense doing a great job this year in general. Yes, against a relatively low level of competition, of playing very disciplined football, of being relatively good about preventing the big play, finding timely pressures in the last couple of weeks, and finding those turnovers, finding those takeaways, and a bit of a different challenge for this team. A different kind of quarterback. They play him twice a year. They know him well. They had a great plan against him last year. No DJ Reader this week, again, on IR, but another fun test for this defense that in the early going this year has been really good.
Yeah, this is a fun test, because if they had DJ Reader, I'd be like, man, they're going to be able to slow down the Ravens rushing attack. Rashad Bateman's dinged up. Love that secondary against those receivers. They have enough speed to contain Lamar. They've done it before. Like, you'd feel really, really good. My big concern here is that the Ravens look at this and they say, well, Rashad Bateman's out. Not that they would love it anyways. Devin Duvernay is our number 1 receiver, and I like Devin Duvernay as a player. He'd be a heck of a 4th receiver for the Bengals, by the way. I'll throw that out there. He's not. He's the Ravens' 2nd receiver and 1st potentially on Sunday. You think he's getting open a bunch against Chidobe Awuzie? You think he's going to just cook these guys and just roast Eli Apple? Like, Eli's playing well, and this Bengals secondary is playing well. And so that's the part of it now, is if you're the Ravens, do you say, we're not going to test that secondary a ton. What we're going to do is just pound this interior of the Bengals defensive line. No DJ Reader. We got our running back. We're going to really push it here with the ground game and get it going. And once we do, then we can play action Lamar and let Lamar do Lamar things. And yeah, he might find Devin Duvernay deep, but he can also target Mark Andrews with the play action. All of those things. It just opens it all up. That would be my concern, is the Ravens rushing attack. Because if they do that and they're controlling time of possession and they're able to move the ball up and down the field and dink and dunk their way, which I think is sort of realistic, then it's going to put pressure on this team that they haven't really had from a we have to score standpoint. I mean, the Ravens are averaging 29.8 points a game. It's a touchdown more than the Bengals, touchdown plus more than the Bengals. So can this one, is this Bengals offense ready for that? Because that means that they'll have to score probably through the air against the team on offense that's beating their defense on the ground. And two, the time of possession factor, all of it. So containing Lamar is a huge chore, and it's obviously number one on the list. But right after that is just stopping the run in general, which I think is going to be really tough.
Yeah, and this is an offense that's been, you mentioned they're scoring well. They've been a bit up and down. They've disappeared at times. They've let teams back into games in big ways, and both of their losses are massive comebacks. And that's not only on the defense for the Ravens, which has been great to start games and has let up points in the second halves of these games, but also the offense just kind of going away. And you listen to Ravens fans who are like, oh, John Harbaugh doesn't know how to adapt. Like, this offense is what it is. And then they don't make any adjustments in the second half once the counterpunch comes. And that sounds familiar for Bengals fans, I think, but it is a different beast. And like you say, James, without DJ Reader in there, this is a team that has shown some success running the ball. A lot of that has been Lamar Jackson. They haven't gotten a lot from their running backs, but also this is the healthiest they've been at running back probably in the last 2 years, with J.K. Dobbins ready probably to play this week, continuing to ramp up a little bit.
Well, he played
as
last
we
week.
Discussed.
He's going to play.
Sorry, continuing to play, I should say,
yeah.
and being more involved.
Yep.
Although, perhaps they lose Justice Hill, but they haven't been healthy at running back, and like they were signing 40-year-old veterans last year.
Yeah, no, they've dealt with a lot of injuries, but the thing is, if you're a running back and you can't run the ball there, then you're probably done. Because and not because their offensive line is insane, but because Lamar Jackson is such a threat, and he's going to set you up. To me, he's going to set you up for success as a runner. So if you can't run with him, knowing that he's going to get his rushing attempts as well, and you're going to have the play actions and RPOs and the different things that they're going to run, I would question it if you can't play running back anymore. And I guess some of those guys didn't. You're right. They signed Le'Veon Bell back in the day. That did not work. In some others. But I think J.K. Dobbins is really good and scored a couple times last week. Wouldn't be shocked at all if he scores again this week.
And didn't they activate a running back off of IR this week? Or am I confusing the Ravens with another team?
No,
Gus
you're
Edwards.
right.
Gus Edwards is on his way back.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll play.
He's ready to play this week. Then that's another
he's
pretty
good.
Solid player.
Yeah. Gus Edwards is solid, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's not like they're like world beaters or anything. It's not like this Baltimore offensive line or world beaters in the run blocking game either. Mm-hmm. They do maybe get Ronnie Stanley back this week. That's something worth watching. And then you wonder how he's going to play. But Linderbaum in there on the interior of the offensive line has been solid for them since week one. We talked with Kevin about that yesterday. Kevin Zeitler, steady as they come at right guard.
Come on, Kevin.
Yeah.
Jeez, Kevin.
What is it with Bengals linemen finishing their careers in Baltimore,
Is he going to finish his career there? He's still playing well.
He is still playing well.
No, that's the thing. Like, if you the two things would be the Bengals passing game and the Ravens rushing attack. I think that's, if you just showed me like
spearheaded by Lamar, right? Like, you're worried most about Lamar.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that, no doubt. And that doesn't mean, by the way, here, I can already feel it. I can feel people saying, well, Lamar can pass it too. Well, no, duh. But you know what they can't do? Pass to guys that would be backing up the Bengals receivers. Like they have no one right now. Like Rashad Bateman, I liked. And what he's done is taken pressure off of Duvernay, and Duvernay's had a breakout start to the season.
On 12 targets.
He's making big plays. It's
right, 13 targets for Duvernay. He's been very efficient on those targets, but it's not like we're talking a small sample size, is all I'm saying.
For sure. And so that's the thing is they could bring him back down to earth. They could bring this whole thing back down to earth. But it starts with the ground game, and then the guy you obviously have to contain is Mark Edwards, or Mark Andrews, excuse me, Mark Andrews, who's a freak, who I anticipate just from a matchup standpoint, based on the intel that I've gathered throughout the week, that 33, Trey Flowers, he's going to continue to do the Mark Andrews treatment. We'll see. And I wouldn't be shocked if we see Dax Hill this week a little bit. Some QB spy looks. I think that's something you can use him on. So we'll see. He's certainly their most athletic safety. And so if you use him this week in that way, wouldn't be shocking to try to contain Lamar a little bit.
I would like to see the heavy package answer, like the 12 answer for the Bengals, like Dax Hill instead of Eli Apple when they go to 2 tight ends, especially if they go to 22, 2 tight ends, fullback, running back. That's where Dax Hill can get on the field. I think instead of Eli Apple, you have Dax and Cheeto out there kind of playing your corner-ish positions, but Dax is floating a little bit. He's going to match up on the tight end. Cheeto is going to match up on the wide receiver. And then you have that, you lose a little bit of size, obviously, if you go with the defensive back instead of a linebacker in that spot. But with the kind of team with Mark Andrews, with Lamar Jackson out there, that seems like a place where you might get some value. If you don't want to put Trey Flowers on the field to do with Mark Andrews on this snap, you put the extra safety out there, and he can kind of play a couple roles depending on alignment.
Yeah, and I think Flowers is going to have that, but you're right. You could certainly see Dax Hill there. I am curious to see what Akeem Davis-Gaither does, how they use him a little bit here. I thought he's played well, man. I good stretch here, a couple games, and can he continue to build on that? At the same time, this could be a big Jermaine Pratt, Logan Wilson. You're going to get hit in the mouth with, was it Patrick Ricard, the fullback coming down the hill? Oh, this could be one of those where you're going to have to be really, really physical. Like that's what I think that's how they're going to try to do it, is just run, and then get that going and go from there.
It wouldn't be shocking, especially if Bateman doesn't play. He didn't practice on Thursday. They signed Andy Isabella. That should be an indicator that he is not going to be ready to go. But yeah, I mean, loading up on the guys that they know they have that are pretty good, Patrick Ricard, Mark Andrews, go heavy a little bit, make the Bengals put Josh Tupou and Zach Carter out there if you feel like those are matchups that you can take advantage of. And I think the Ravens probably do think that those guys need to step up. BJ Hill is going to need to step up and continue to make some nice plays in DJ Reader's absence, because they are hurting on the interior of that defensive line without DJ Reader. And it wouldn't be shocking at all to me, given the injuries, given the approach from Baltimore, if they try to take advantage of that. And watch, as we're saying all this, they come out and just spread it out with Devin Duvernay, Andy Isabella, and Demarcus Robinson.
Yeah, see, look,
Tylan Wallace. I guess. I don't know.
I mean, I will say this, and I know you got some tweets too. I would have been open to Andy Isabella. I would have been open to the idea. So there's that. I mean, come on now.
I mean, there's no place for him on the roster.
When he just signed, like, he is a really good athlete though. And so
he has speed.
But that's what I mean.
Yeah.
But is he going to win watch him catch the game winner? I'm done. Prediction. And I know I gave my prediction yesterday because now we have to on crossovers. Spoiler. But I just think this Bengals passing game gets going. I just do. I think prime time. I think La'el Collins is going to have his best game.
Wow.
That rest is going to help him. That might be a bold prediction, but I do. I think they're going to pass protect well enough. I think Burrow and company, they might not jump out to a lead right away. This Ravens team remembers 525 yards and a sweep and all of that stuff. And at the same time, I think Burrow, Chase, they're going to be calm and they're going to make some big plays. I think Burrow finds Chase for a touchdown, Chase over 100 yards, Burrow over 300 plus, and the Bengals over 30 plus for the first time this season. I also think Boyd finds the end zone. That would be my other one. If I had to pick receivers that find the end zone. Not that T won't, because T might. Look, T's going to listen to this and be like, man, you don't think I'm going to score a touchdown? Regardless, I think the Bengals win 31-27 in a tight one.
There are opportunities there. And we'll see if this Bengals offense can capitalize on them and if the defense can do enough. And really, it's Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson and friends. But, it's the first two of the and friends that scare you more.
Oh,
and so
Lamar's scary. Lamar Jackson is scary.
He's been really good this year.
People try to downplay, man. He's scary. He's tough.
But the Ravens haven't finished games. And one of these teams will have to finish this one. I hope. I don't want to be talking about a tie on Sunday.
Oh, my God.
Either way, we will be with you in the post game on Sunday. James will be coming to you from M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore. So come back, join us again then after week 5. We'll sum everything up for you and give you some initial takeaways. Until next time, Bengals fans, thanks for listening to the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day, and have a good one.